you. If not, I'll just do it without her. Okay, and I have a phone number here I could call her on. 1 second.
Okay, we're live now. Okay.
He's almost there.
Good morning, everybody. Anyone seeing us now live on eTurbo News? We're getting ready for our breaking news show. It's going to be an exciting event. Feel free to join us directly. If you do, just go to worldtourismevents.com, and sign up for the World Tourism Events West Breaking News West discussion. I'm sorry. Okay, and we're getting ready in about 4 minutes. Thank you. Now she's in. I'll let her in now, okay?
Okay, good. See, there we are. There you are, Severine.
Hello, Jürgen. Hello.
Okay, we're a little bit late. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're starting in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And hope you're doing okay.
Very good. Thank you.
And I have here a copy of the book, as I can see.
Me too.
Okay, so now it just became live. So we have 4 guests. So let me. Okay, everyone joining us on eTurbo News or live stream or Hawaii News Online, wherever you see us now. If you wanted to be part of this live audience, you can still do this. Go to worldtourismevents.com and sign up for the Breaking News West event. And you can be part of our discussion and you can actually ask questions. And we're just ready to get started, but there's enough time to register and be part of us if you like. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm pushing some wrong buttons here. All right, so you guys are ready?
Already.
We're ready to go.
Aloha and good morning from Hawaii. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, joining you from Livestream.travel and eTurbo News. Today we're working together with the World Tourism Network, and we'll be talking about a new book written by Dr. Peter Tarlow. He's the author of many books already, and we have a guest, actually the co-author of this book, Severine, joining. I think she's joining us from London, but I will give Peter the lead. From our end, I just wanted to let you know, if you missed this event or you have to go in between, you can see us always live on breakingnewsshow.com. They will repeat it, and it will also repeat on eTurbo News over the next few hours, or probably almost for a day, depending on other news items. Well, we always start with the weather here in Hawaii. It's a beautiful sunny day. I don't see a cloud. I still see the moon up there, but it's bright and just simply a fantastic, beautiful day here in Hawaii. How is everything with Peter? Peter is joining us from College Station, Texas, and I will actually hand over to him because it's really his book, it's his show, and it's his guest joining us.
Well, thank you. Everything here is great. It's a nice warm day in Texas. If you use the Celsius scale, it's about 41 degrees. So most Texans like hot weather, so we're very happy. If you're using Fahrenheit, it's about 100 degrees today, maybe 105. So again, we in Texas like hot weather. I'm sure Severine in London is probably having a little cooler weather than we are here in Texas, but that's kind of our traditional things. What's the weather like in London?
It's beautiful. It's actually a beautiful day today, but certainly the temperature is not as hot as in Texas. So it's about 22 degrees here Celsius. So it's a beautiful day anyway.
Nice.
Blue sunshine.
The beautiful in Texas, that would be a beautiful winter's day. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
We won't go too much on the weather, but I'm going to kind of introduce and then pass it back and forth to Severine, my co-author. I think today's news in Afghanistan almost sets the stage.
Yeah.
Because we wrote a book about personal resilience, and the most important part of it was how to survive a pandemic. But again, we're now seeing all sorts of other problems taking place around the world, and the fact that because of today's terrorism attacks, we're seeing again a renewal of terrorism, and that's again another form of personal resistance. Resilience. When the world seems to be crashing in on you, what do you do? And so about 3 years ago, I wrote a book on personal reconstruction, on how do you deal with the issues of legal issues, psychological issues, spiritual issues, etc. And then I thought, well, maybe we really need to go from the general to the personal. And how do people get through just the issues of, for example, taking care of children when schools are closed? How do we deal with the fact that we think we're almost ready to be done with COVID, and Zappo, the Delta variant, comes and we're right back to where we began again? And how do we not get depressed about that? How do we not get upset about that? So what the goal of this book was to allow people to have a guide, it wasn't meant to be highly footnoted and a major academic work. It was meant to be a common sense approach. How do I get through the day? How do I maintain myself spiritually? How do I maintain myself physically? Do I take vitamins? Do I not take vitamins? And then I was very lucky that I had the opportunity of getting to know Severine, who she's an international person. She's French, grew up in Italy, lives in London, and so she kind of does the spectrum of Europe. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to have these concepts seen not only from an American perspective, which is obviously out of which I write, but also out of a European perspective. And I could think of nobody who would be more international, certainly dealing with 3 different cultures within the European continent. The Mediterranean culture of Italy, the not central meaning from east to west, but north to south culture of France, and then the British Isles, who are kind of their own special culture, to say the least. So we kind of looked at this book and we tried to understand it from different perspectives. Also, we wanted to look at it, how does a male see things and how does a female see things? So that was the other side of this, because while we're all human beings and we understand that, still men and women often see the world slightly differently and through different eyes. And what makes one a feeling of a failure or frustration to a man is not always the way a woman sees it, or vice versa. I think to My Fair Lady in Pygmalion, when he talking about Eliza Doolittle says, why can't a woman think like a man? Well, they can't because they're not men. They're women. And therefore women think like women and men think like men. So the goal was to combine our efforts to look at these critical human problems. And it doesn't matter if you're in England or if you're in Asia, or if you're in, God forbid, right now, Afghanistan or Africa, but we're human beings, but yet we bring with us particular issues. Now, I would say there probably is one bias, and that is that Severine and I both come from highly developed, economically developed countries. And so therefore, we're not looking at this from the perspective of underdeveloped countries, which have some other problems. But of course, we all share our own common humanity. So I'm going to pass over, and then we're going to go back and forth to Severine. And this will be the second time we've done this. The last time was to a women's conference, and that was really interesting. I think I was the only man at the conference. So I kind of represented 50% of the world's population. But Severine, it's really been a delight to work with you and to have you join me as a partner in this.
No, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Jürgen, and thank you very much for inviting me on the live streaming of WTN on breaking news. So, yeah, well, interesting what you say in your introduction. Well, what I would say is that it would be as well worth of note, I think, mentioning how we started actually to develop this book, right? Because you mentioned before your previous book, it was Personal Reconstruction, that was dealing really with personal crisis, right? Which many people go through, and most people, if not everyone, we all go through at some point in our lives, which can be for any reason. It can be for a health reason, it can be for a financial reason, it can be an emotional reason. It can be a breakup. It can be anything that happens to anyone. And you mentioned developed and underdeveloped countries. Yes, to an extent, there are differences. But from a personal human perspective, if we put it in parallel to, where we actually grow up and the society that is around us, there are some threads that are very, very common. So, what happened when we decided to write this book? Well, it was, it was during COVID, right? It was during COVID. And that was probably the most striking world crisis that we've seen in recent times. And it was a world crisis, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So looking at that from a personal perspective, because, then there is crisis, but it's kind of overcoming it. And what has been felt very, very strongly during COVID, and to an extent we still feel the repercussion now, is actually the fact that there is a sense of disempowerment, right? A sense of disempowerment because a lot of the decisions are taken from our hands, in terms of, like, for example, there was self-isolation, there was, political decisions, there were many things that were done for safety, for health reasons, and so forth. Then there were loss of jobs, the economy that has been hit everywhere. But hang on a minute, there is this sense of disempowerment that is inevitable even when there is a personal crisis, which is kind of what is on the outside, what is kind of, what we see. But personal resilience is really turning that round. So there is that
going beyond the frustration of disempowerment to the hope of empowerment. And
Absolutely.
That, I think, was one of the goals of our book, was to show people that even when everything seems to be falling apart, and for certainly a good part of 2020 and part of 2021, it feels like the world is falling apart, you still can get some control of your life and take a negative and turn it into a positive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as well, remembering what are the important things in life, okay? Because that's, and certain elements, we can actually somehow control them. Like we can control somehow our health. We can control somehow even our social life. We can somehow control as well our finances. we can control our mental aspect and keeping our spirits high. So there are these aspects that, although there is never and never in any phase, even in the best period of our life, we can have everything under control, but these things can be planned and actions can be taken. So, and good routines can be actually created. So that is what this book is all about, especially.
One of the inspirations when I first started thinking about the book, and then Severine, of course, became part of it, was ironically, I thought about Anne Frank in Amsterdam during World War II. And of course, most people in the world have read the Diary of Anne Frank. And why I thought about that was, talk about utter despair. I had the privilege of inspecting not only the outside of the Anne Frank Museum, but because I was a guest of the Dutch government, actually going into their rooms, which were incredibly small. They were miserable.
Yeah.
And here is a young girl. She's probably 12, when she died, I think she was 14, but let's say she started around 11 or 12. I don't remember the exact age. And Germans are every place. They're out to kill you. They're out to murder you. And despite the fact that they're in this terrible attic when they can't make any noise during the day, she doesn't give up. She's resilient enough to find a way to develop a schedule for herself, to figure out when she was going to eat and not eat, or how much, and again, you couldn't run to the supermarket under Nazi-occupied Amsterdam. But she took the negative and turned it, if not during the period of her life, into a super positive. At least she halted the negative, and she refused to give up her power and her control over her life. And she heard at the end of her life, when we really pulled the diary together, we know she had heard a British broadcast asking people to document what life was like under the German occupation. And she said, wow, this book could be helpful. So it was first a personal diary that she wrote to empower herself, and then eventually became a way of her revenge against the German occupiers. And so when COVID first hit, and we were kind of all, if you remember, in quarantine, we couldn't go out and life was miserable or any place in the world, I said, if Anne Frank can do it, I can do it. And what do I need? What can I learn from her? And one of the things I learned from her is you never give up hope. You always, and so I think that Severine will agree with me. One of the concepts, one of the main themes of the book, though we give a lot of personal details on what to do and how to survive not killing your kids, et cetera, but one of the things was, don't ever lose control. Don't ever give up hope, and turn anything that is negative, learn to see it from a positive perspective. And that's one of the reasons we created some exercises. We created ideas for people to kind of face those issues. And I know
Absolutely.
that I think I'm speaking for Severine also when I give those concepts.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, Peter, you mentioned Anna Frank. And in that, I could mention, you mentioned a lovely young lady, and it actually brought to my mind as well, Man in Search of Meaning of Frankl, which is another amazing book. Again, another amazing story in which we see as well, because you mentioned about, of course, turning what is negative into a positive. But it's also about taking action, right? Taking positive action. And that's a very personal aspect. And that comes from the strength inside, right? And that strength inside can only come when it's very no nonsense, because keeping control is actually about having a no nonsense approach as well to life, looking after ourselves. That's the best thing, And just like, like our body is incredibly important, If we don't look after ourselves, if we don't have good habits in terms of, like, for example, what is nutrition, what is, physical activity. I mean, you, Peter, go for long walks every morning, walks and run, and that what keeps you healthy. And you know, most people that actually, you know, are able to actually then be as well, let's say, good contributor to society. Okay, because then we say, okay, we are not empowered sometimes to make the difference as much as we would like to be. But hang on a minute. If we look after ourselves first, okay, our mental health, okay, keeping our spirits high, surrounding ourselves with the right people, okay, but as well, you know, it's our body, and that actually gives us the strength then actually to make the difference, to actually act, you know, personally for our life, to have results in our life, but also then to actually make the difference and speak up and act. And make the difference and do, you know, and do activity, social activity, even, you know, voluntary activity, or like in terms of businesses, like driving a business so that actually it can employ people, you know, or like, you know, or taking, you know, just going to work to actually feed the family, you know. So all of these activities that, you know, sometimes we need to be invented. Sometimes everyone needs to be invented. And actually, when we look at it, you know, at crisis from that perspective as well, it is a moment of reflection, but it allows us as well to do things differently. And differently, because we are creature of habits as humans, is never something that we actually really love to do, but actually it's the source of innovation, it's the source of progress, you know. So it can actually, it brings good. So, you know, going back again to the topics that we looked at throughout the book, you know, there is a physical aspect, but there is the mental aspect. And the mental aspect, which is about keeping the spirit high, what I absolutely loved in working with you, Peter, was that we have been able to actually bring into that aspect what is the spiritual aspect. There is, I was following the chat a little bit, and I was looking at Dr. Birgit Trauer that actually put about mind, body, spirit, right? And, you know, often the spiritual aspect is associated to religion, and it can be associated to religion. It can be associated to mindset. Some people are associated to mindset. The important things is remembering actually that there is, you know, that we are life, really. So
yes, and I think that was one of the things that we really stressed was the whole concept of spirituality. Again, that's not trying to say you have to be Jewish or Catholic or Protestant or Hindu or Muslim. That we were not speaking from the technical religious aspect, but understanding that you're part of the total world, that you're not just, the world doesn't revolve around you, and learning to appreciate each day of life. You can either choose to see life as a negative, or you can choose to see life as a positive. And we know that people who tend to be positive about life have lower blood pressure, they are healthier, they live longer, and they make other people live longer. But it's incredible how someone who tends to be negative pulls everybody else down, and how someone who tends to be positive pulls everybody else up. And one of the goals of the book was to say, yes, we understand. We wrote it at the height of the first COVID crisis. I don't know if we'll have another one or not, but we were going through lockdowns and schools were closed and people were losing their jobs and there was economic tragedies, et cetera, et cetera. We're saying, no, you're alive. You have, as long as there's life, there's hope. Go beyond thinking just about yourself. See yourself in the broad spectrum of history and how you can work to make this world a little bit better. So one of the things that guided me, in Hebrew, we have the word tikkun olam, which means fixing the world. And the world is never 100%. There's always something wrong. But you can choose to either be passive and just complain about the things that are wrong, and there will always be things that are wrong, or you can choose to be positive and say, okay, these are the challenges. How can I go out and use those challenges to make myself stronger? In the case of COVID, how do we get beyond the house? How do we learn to think? How do we move not only outside physically, but can we move inside of our heads to see the beauty in a world that we could create when we can't create a world outside of us? So I think, again, Tamarine, you'll agree with me that on a basis, first basis was finding the spiritual. And if you could find the spiritual, you could find the healthy, the physical health and the mental health. And that would give you the strength to deal with the financial and the legal issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's easy to find the spiritual, I think, from the moment in which as well we are faced with death, right?
Yes.
Because when we are faced with death, we see something which we don't understand really. So from that perspective, if we want to overcome it as well, we need to kind of believe, have hope, right? Because otherwise what's the point of being here, right? What would be the point of being here? What you were saying, just keeping the spirit high. Well, hang on a second. Yes, why am I here? I am here because I am here, and because I'm here as well to help, and I'm here to actually be and enjoy, even like in the struggles, but there is always something, there is always a positive aspect that we can find about things, and there is always something that even waking up in the morning and, in a moment of pandemics, even people that have been strongly isolated, but still, if we think as well, for example, what has been really, I think, something amazing that has happened actually during the pandemic is the explosion of social media, of the internet, of initiatives, that brought people from all over the world really together, thanks to technology.
Yes, and thanks to technology, just think right now, I'm sitting in College Station, Texas. Jürgen is sitting in Hawaii, which is 5 hours time zones away from me in one level. You're sitting in London, which is 6 hours the other side of the world.
Absolutely.
And there's really 11 time zones between London and Honolulu, Hawaii. And yet we're all here talking to each other. And I've never met you physically. You've never been.
And we wrote this book still together.
Yes. And we're friends. And
absolutely
know each other. And one of the gifts, not that the pandemic was good, I don't want to in any way say that, but one of the good things we got out of the negative of COVID was the use of social media, not only social media, but all of the Zooms and other, companies that are out there competing. And I now have friends all over the world, literally all over the world. I've never met them physically, but I feel like I know them. And that's I speak to people from Mozambique, to people in the Middle East, to people in Northern Europe, to people in Latin America. Wow. If I had been living in think how miserable think how miserable COVID would have been if we were living 50 years ago. What a miracle.
Absolutely.
How isolated we would have been. And children, as hard as it was, and I'm not going to say it wasn't hard on children, they could still at least continue their schooling on Zoom.
Absolutely.
And if it had been 50 years ago, they would have just been sent home, or 100 years ago, and that would have been it. You just would have looked at four walls and wondered how much creativity is in me. But we really live in a resilient age. And so despite the fact that this is so hard on so many people, and I understand that, it's also a chance. We have tools that we've never had before. And those tools allow us to move on and to maintain mental health, where before there might have been only distraughtness and fear and upsetness.
And in our book as well, we go through, because you mentioned before as well about families and so forth, and we go through quite an extent as well about the dynamics of kind of being isolated with people that are very close to us. And so what is really resilience in that, right? So the thing is that in crisis, we get always highlighted I think our good habits and our bad habits.
Yes.
Right. So that's what happens. So if already we are in a setting in which, in which there are problems, like even like in the family, or habits that are not, let's say, conducive to like getting on, or, with not much awareness of or care towards each other, these things are highlighted. It becomes, they become more, more evident just because you are there. And so, from that perspective, this book is as well also about highlighting those, highlighting as well good habits, in terms of, because when you actually are able to create them, in a situation like that, you're able to overcome. That's what the action aspect comes in, because that's the transformation. Because often you need to be put into a moment of crisis in order to really see what's wrong. Okay, because otherwise you don't spot it. Otherwise you're used to be in a certain way, and unless you've got something that happens to you, like for example, we see that with health as well, with people like people in the corporate world, that even that goes and they carry on and work and work and work, high level of stress up until heart attack or anything like that. We see that in many things, from health perspective, from social perspective, and so on. So it's really important, so this book really is about, as I was saying, we put together what was like very, very basic,
yes,
no nonsense sort of advice of actually, getting back to actually what is really truly important. And socially.
And really, life is basically happiest when you're down to basics.
Absolutely.
And so the goal was not to create hundreds of quotes and 10,000 footnotes that would all in the end say the same thing. How could you make this in an easy size book that somebody could stick in a purse, stick in wherever, they just carry it in their briefcase or whatever. They could consult it quickly. And that was one of the reasons also, and if people are interested in finding the book, you can find it on Amazon, and which is probably the easiest way to find it. And there's also a electronic copy. And so the electronic copy means that you can just download it, put it on your, I actually put mine on my iPhone. You don't even have to go to your iPad or your computer, and you can just kind of, it's good reading if you're on the subway, on a bus, you're just sitting in the park. So it wasn't meant that, oh, where was I? Let me go back. I missed part of the theme. You could open this book any place you want and still find some sort of value, because the theme of the book is consistent. And that is finding hope and positivity, even in the midst of crisis.
Absolutely.
And if you can do, and so the goal was to make it easy for people, not hard, but easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there is the financial aspect, which is really important, which is, again, it's about savings. And before, when we spoke last time about the book, and it was at a women's conference, we went through as well the difference between women and men. But really, yes, there are differences, and there are differences all the time between everything. There are differences between cultures, between way people are brought up, not just between sexes. But at the same time, is what is good to look at as well is that from differences, there is cooperation, there is growth that comes. It's the same like in a family, it's the same like in, intercultural relations. So, what it is, the complexity of that. Yes, maybe women address things in a different way. Women sometimes can be more emotional, somehow,
Yes, every man will agree with you on that one.
Yes, there is a hormonal aspect that we get, that men don't have, so there is more steadiness usually in men, in terms of emotions. But again, there is, people talk a lot, especially in leadership now, it's about emotional intelligence. Okay, so in leadership coaching, there is a lot about emotional intelligence. It's also understanding that It's also living with that and getting the wisdom out of that, because even in moments of crisis, sometimes we can go, really low, right? But it doesn't mean because we actually get a low that we don't come up back up. It's actually realizing that's actually part of life. And I can tell you, Peter, as a woman, I think us women in that, we really realize that, because we go sometimes with so many emotions,
Yes.
much more than men. We are used to that.
Yes. You guys are much better than we are as far as dealing with highs and lows. But, both are very important. Life is a very complex thing. There's no one magic formula or magic bullet to life. And I think a lot of people want that magic bullet. And one of the things I hope they would get out of this book is, nobody gets through life perfectly. And the other side of that is, I always tell my medical students that everyone is born with an illness that's going to kill them, a fatal illness. And they go, what? What illness is that? And I go, it's called life. Because in the end, we are all going to die. We're given just a few brief seconds in the realm of history to be on this planet. And it's up to you to decide how you want to use those seconds. You want to use those seconds to make an impact on the totality of the universe? Great. You want to be nothing more than a leaf floating in the air? That's your right too. But one of the great things about spirituality is that we know we are empowered, even when you feel unempowered. I work with women in the federal prison system, and they certainly are very often feeling unempowered. Their lives are controlled. And yet the most successful, I think it's funny to say it, but the most successful prisoners, the people who get the most out of the prison experience and actually learn from it, and are those people who are, even when they have lost, control has been taken away from them, they find a way to inner self to be able to deal with life. And I've dealt with some women who are absolutely incredible, and where I thought, oh, this woman is not going to make it to prison. It's going to be a terrible experience. And they turn themselves around. They use that experience to not have to worry about where they're going to eat or how they're going to make a bed or what they're going to do, but rather to focus on making themselves and those around them better. And those people, when they left prison, ended up truly leaving in better shape than when they came in. But again, on some level, all of us are in prison. It's called life. How we choose to use it, how we choose to see our environment, we can see it as very small or very big. We can see ourselves as narrow or wide. We can see ourselves as having wonderful opportunities to meet new people, or we can see ourselves as disliking everybody and being very lonely. Those are personal choices that we make. And those are really, I think, the themes of this book and why it's so important. And I'm hoping people will go to Amazon or go to wherever and find the book, use the book, and share the book, because it's not just about you, it's about us. It's not the me, it's the we, which is not
absolutely,
good.
Absolutely. And the we is so important, Peter. The we is so important because the we is the learning aspect, right? It's a learning aspect. Even like in a relationship, like for example, when I work with my clients as a coach, it's all about holding space, because there is the educational aspect. There are some elements that needs to be somehow taught because it's about awareness, right? But you don't learn if you just are not given the space to learn yourself, if it makes sense. So it's kind of sometimes what I see, working with my clients is actually people can get there on their own. It's kind of like holding that space so that actually people, you can take that decision. You can actually change, your life. You can actually make that decision, even like for your career or for your finances or whatever, or set, because often, what is, speaking to people, collaborating, that gives strength. Just having someone that listened to you, having a bounce back. We kind of, it's kind of you know, it's further than the teaching. It becomes a mentoring aspect.
Yes. And actually, life would be terribly boring if everything went right.
Yeah.
We probably would never grow. And we wouldn't, and there is growth in struggle. And while I don't think anybody wants to wish anything bad on anyone, all of us are going to have problems in life. There's nobody who gets through life without problems. And the issue is, do you find the inner strength to deal with those problems, overcome them, and are you resilient enough, which is why we were called it personal resilience, to find a way to conquer them and to come out better than when you first got them. And so I think, you know, I really want to thank you for working with me on this. It's been a wonderful learning experience.
Thanks to you.
I got to see the world through European eyes and through a woman's eyes. Hopefully you got to see the world through American eyes and a man's eyes.
Absolutely. 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 Yes.
I don't know if anybody has any questions for us, Jürgen, but if so, I think we have a little bit of time that we could take some questions.
Yes, and there have been some good engagement in the chat group. Also, thank you for both of you. Very, very interesting conversation. And yes, I think we're testimony here at the World Tourism Network, because none of us know each other before March. And now we have people in 128 March of 2020 to say, and now thanks to Zoom. And I have to admit, I didn't know what Zoom was in March of 2020.
Yes.
No one did.
We now have people in 128 countries. Many of us are friends. We never met each other, and we, you know, there is a it has its advantages, of course, technology, but nothing goes over personal meetings. So I hope one of these days, soon, all of us that have been on our so many calls and Zoom events we can all meet in person. We have a beer in a pub in London, and Severin can host us. No, just kidding.
That would be amazing. Or, you know, or coming to see you in Hawaii or in Texas. I think we need to do like different.
We just have to get
meetings.
the government to take off all the restrictions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I mean. But I know we had some people with comments and questions. You can just simply raise your hand, and I think maybe we can start with a frequent guest on our show, Birgit Tower. I think she's joining us from Australia, I believe. And let me just see if I
think, yes, she's.
Hello.
Oh, there she is. Okay,
Hi,
I see.
Hi there. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I don't know.
We can hear you, but we can't see you yet.
I cannot see you. Do you have your camera on?
Birgit?
Oh, there she goes. Okay.
So, you know, I don't know where you got my record, and in between I was in Greece as well. So I'm obviously very interested in what you're talking about here, Severin, and I totally am online with the need for publication, and Peter, your books as well. And you will note, obviously, Jürgen, you know about my book that I've published, which is The Way of the Peaceful Traveller, Dare to Care and Connect, which aligns with what we've been talking about today. And I think there's a lot of need for all of us, or everyone, to actually you know, engage in the discussion on what we've just talked about. But it's, I think, what I've realized again and again while I'm here in Europe, including my own personal experiences, is you know, the resilience or the ease with positivity and so forth is not as easily accessible to a lot of people. And the majority of people that I've talked to and I watch and I look at, you know, development of depression and social impact and all that, it's huge. Sorry, I can see there's a video. I saw, here I am. Listen,
hello, we can see you now.
Now we're live.
Yes.
Now we're talking. Good stuff.
Now we see
Great, good to see you. I'm really enjoying your discussions. And every so often I try to switch on, but I've been moving between Greece and Germany. And yes, Australia is a year and a half ago away, and I cannot return back because of the political agendas of even returning back or leaving the country again. So I'm an Australian here in ex-German. I had to apply for residency permit to stay in Europe to be legal. It's really complex. So it's very stressful, and perhaps we could have a talk about that once, you know, who are we, what are we experiencing? Just generally speaking, I just wanted to thank both you, Severine and Peter, to allude to the things that are close to my heart. And I'm very much involved in trying to set up workshops and so forth. My perspective originally came from the notion of peace. What's peace? Inner peace, peace with ourselves, within ourselves, peace with others, peace with the environment. So I'm looking at the whole notion of peace. On the other side of the coin, we look at conflict. And conflict is due to value systems differences, lack of resources, and power and control. These are the three drivers of conflict. So how can we help people who are suffering at the moment to deal with all of this? This is, to me, is what's important. You know, how can they deal with conflicts within themselves? We're looking at not just I'm a social psychologist by training, but specifically related to tourism behavior and leisure behavior. My interest is always, who are we as individuals within the context of society? What impact does society have on us? And what potential impact can we have as individuals within societies? Because there's always a mutual exchange in that. And we can take empowerment, but unfortunately, you, Peter, and Jürgen, all of us, we are probably quite strong people. We have strength within ourselves. We have built up emotional resilience to continue on with the knockbacks that we have in life on a daily basis, whether financially, as you said earlier, Severine, or relationship related, or work related, or whatever. But however, unfortunately, I look around, there's a lot of people who do not have that, whether it's in the workforce, whether it's in university, students are suffering immensely. So, you know, how do we get the message out? That to me is at the core of where I'm at the moment. I'm actually trying to read, and see where can I now relocate myself with all of that. I come from academia before I came from industry in travel and tourism and leisure behavior and leisure. So I have industry background to the immensity, but also academic background. And I feel there's a need to push this information that you and Peter really, really addressed. And I feel that it has to do with emotions, emotional intelligence, with a realization that people need to learn about their needs, boundary setting, other people's needs, including that. So it's a mutual exchange, but you have to communicate with that. I'm very much involved into nonviolent communication, which addresses that stuff. Then also, you know, what are the values? Are we looking at value systems, individual value systems, social value systems? We are not in isolation of the institutional value systems that, you know, surround us. We cannot escape it. We grow up in them. We are surrounded on a daily basis. I look at Australia, politically, socially, the value systems there. I feel uncomfortable to say that I'm Australian at the moment. Sorry to say that.
They have really wild stuff going on in Australia.
Well, hello, you know, so it's, you know, so thank you very much, Peter. And I'm glad you sort of,
you know, that. You probably don't know, I'm the official worrier of the Australian Special Forces.
Oh, really? You're serious?
As you
wow.
know, I'm very serious. One of the two national Jewish sports is worrying. We're very good at worrying. And so the soldiers in Australia, they don't have to worry when they do things because they call me and I worry for them. So
yes.
I'm their professional worrier. And,
yes.
And when they're sent on a mission, their wives don't have to worry because they know I'm doing the worrying for them. So,
that sounds pretty good now, because Aussies would say, she'd be right, mate. They don't worry. They leave it to other people to do it.
Right now, all my Aussie friends, and I must tell you that my theme for Australia is Aussies are awesome, which is because I've never met an Aussie I don't like. I'm sure there are some, but I've never met one. So I am now become the official worrier for the entire continent of Australia. And you got
amazing.
To worry about right now.
You're a multi-talented, multi-skilled, obviously, Peter. I can see that.
Yes.
So anyway, coming back to where I am, I'm just delighted to be part of this discussion because it is close to my heart. I think we need to do more. So Severine, thank you very much for your book. Obviously, I published my book, which I hope, Peter and Jürgen, that we can have a discussion about soon about my book. Perhaps, you know, elevate that to the discussion point to what you've talked about today. I think the more we bring into awareness and consciousness of this whole notion is, you know, that's what we can do. Where do we start? You know, we have to put the message out there, and whichever way it goes. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. And I'll worry about you too, as an Australian citizen.
Whoa. Yeah. See, I grew up in Germany till I was 19 years of age.
Oh, all
And I
right.
had to come back and get a permanent residency
Ah.
after being an Australian citizen only, because I took my European citizenship away when I became an Australian citizen. I was 3 months stuck in Barcelona, I'll tell you quickly. I could not, after it started, I was in Dubai to meet up with my son in Barcelona and travel. And then all of a sudden I saw the message by the French president on Arab television that they're going to close the border in 24 hours. So I rang Emirates to say, get me on the next flight to Barcelona. So I was on the next flight next morning, got to Barcelona, they shut the doors to non-Europeans. Right? And I sat there for 3 months, couldn't get into Germany because I wasn't a German, till I wrote to the Bundesgrenzpolizei in Frankfurt with the Kommissar. I have 24 hours, 3 days before my tourist visa ran out. I said, I'm stranded here. What can I do? The Kommissar rang me next morning. Here is your email from me. You get on the next flight and get into Germany before your visa runs out. And that's the only way I got in. Lufthansa boarded me with that thing on my phone, and Frankfurt immigration only with that thing on my phone by that Kommissar from the Bundesgrenzpolizei. Otherwise, I would have never gotten to Germany. And then I put into process my, residency. It's in a story of itself. So there you go. As a German, you can possibly relate to that.
Beautiful example of resilience.
Yes. So I've been told. Yes, totally. So I can, when you talk about that, I can relate to all of this stuff.
Well, we're glad.
It's
always good to hear another person who's found a way to confront problems and turn the negative into somewhat of a positive.
To the epitome.
Yes,
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes. So I think that's what we need to obviously foster. And I think that all of us are talking about to foster than other people is actually to build up emotional resilience. I think that's what the message is today.
Jürgen, do we have any other questions?
Yes, just simply raise your hand, and then we'd be happy to give you the microphone. If there aren't any questions or comments, we're just a small group here, so feel free to just jump in. I have to push a button. It's a little bit of a different system we're testing here, so I have to allow you to talk. I didn't know that. So just raise your hand and I will immediately allow you to talk. And maybe in the meantime, I don't know if you feel like it, but Tony Ofungi is our correspondent in Uganda for eTurbo News, and he's online with us. And we actually published a story, and he was nice enough to send us a video courtesy of the Uganda Broadcast Corporation on refugees coming in from Afghanistan. And Uganda is one of the countries that take in refugees. So I just wondered, maybe you can give us an update if you feel like it, Tony. I'm not sure if your microphone is on.
Hello.
Oh, Tony.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Yeah. No,
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being for calling in. And I'm just sorry to put you on the spot, but there's a lot of news, of course, coming with terror attacks in Afghanistan and so forth. And Uganda has been one of the countries that actually opened up and allowed refugees coming in. How do people feel about it? What's the as an Ugandan and as a member of the press, can you give us a little bit of a background? What is happening?
Okay. Yeah, what is happening is, of course, there was a lot of excitement last week. And of course, there was a big buzz on social media.
Okay, hang on. He's coming back as a panelist so we can see him. That's just give him 1 second. The system is doing some switching here. Tony, now you can turn your camera on. We will see you now.
I hope I can, but it's quite dark here. It's fine because
Your voice. Okay.
I'm in what do you call it? Light mode.
Okay, no problem.
So you see, there was excitement last week when social media was hitting the rounds, and everybody was thinking, okay, I'm going to marry an Afghan girl or something. You know, it was just jokes about it, and they were taking it in as you know, the usual social media buzz and making jokes about it. But it brought the human sense, that the impression that an Afghan, people think, okay, when you think of Afghans, they are terrorists, and it brought a good side about them being individuals. So it was all over social media. Obviously, you know, we have some political, should I say, analysts. Everybody had their views, because some were wondering whether or not it's going to be a problem for the country. Because, as you know, there was a worry that maybe, you know, some bad elements may slip in. I mean, originally, you know, we all have our forums, and people were expressing that the opposition candidates and should I say candidates or parties were all having the skepticism. But over and above, the public was a bit more positive, and for the fact, because, you know, Uganda has had a history of hosting refugees, because we used to have our fair share of wars, and we were a net exporter of refugees until maybe about 25 years ago. We are surrounded now by South Sudan, which is a new nation, and obviously there's a lot of war still going there. In the Congo, there's also a lot of wars going there with different rebel groups. I probably don't know if you heard that there was, in the recent past, it's the biggest, the most riskiest, it's the riskiest country to be a ranger in Congo, because over the years they've been killing rangers who are giving their lives in the line of duty, protecting the mountain gorillas. And I always get reports from the Virungas, and it's really tough over there. The other country, of course, we've been having a few. Burundi has cooled down, but there's some people, refugees that are from Burundi. So, and even before that, I mean, like I posted in the newsletter today, we in Uganda, we hosted, as far back as the Second World War, there was a big Polish community and refugee camp when I think, you know, you recall that Germany, when Germany was conquering Europe, and the big population of Poles who actually settled in Uganda. So in the 70s, the Palestinians were also settled in Uganda, especially, I mean, obviously Yasser Arafat by then was considered a terrorist with the PLO. But then we had, everybody knows the dictator Idi Amin, and then Uganda had switched sides from the Israelis to hosting the PLO. Then after that, of course, back and forth, Cold War, we became more you know, right now, of course, our relations with Israel and Palestinian cause, we are quite receptive on both sides, or should I say neutral. And for the business side, we were definitely affected by the COVID-19. So what happened was, when yesterday, the refugees began to trickle in. We are expecting about 2,000. So it's a bit of a good thing for the hotels, because there's been no business at all. It has affected other sectors like like the supply chain that supplies, agriculture, groceries, and everything. Other businesses have been really affected. So it was a bit of a relief to the hotels, saying that, okay, at least we are going to get some business from the 2,000 refugees that are going to be hosted. The American government has agreed to shoulder the burden. Obviously, it's in a sense, which is a good thing, that money will at least begin to flow into well, it's 2,000 is a small number, but still it will make a difference for a sector that has been on its knees. Obviously, I mean, because if I tell you personally, I'm also in the tourism industry, but what keeps my head up is when I, as a correspondent, we are keeping sane, because sometimes you think, okay, there's no business flowing in. When you have some engagements, you realize that far across the world, there's Eugen, there's Linda and the team from ETN that you are engaging in, and then also the ATB, WTN, and all our forums. And once you are engaged with a community like that, you know that at least it keeps you sane. Because on a personal level, I would tell you, sometimes I dream that I'm on a safari, but only to wake up in bed. Sometimes, of course, we've lost a few friends, and it's very sad that I mean, personally, you go to bed and then you actually having those kind of nightmares, and then because I mean, we're losing people. We had our bout of the second wave, although our numbers are not as bad as many other countries. But you see, they're all part of the global community. But by and large, we welcome the Afghans. It's of course a reflection that at least Africa is doing their part in solving issues on the geopolitical stage. I'm not sure whether you heard what happened in Tanzania yesterday. There was a bit of an attack at the embassy, at the French embassy. Some terrorists were actually put out of action, but I don't know if it's been on the news. But it's I'll share it with you later. But it's a bit graphic, so maybe I won't. But by and large, that's what's going on in this part of Africa.
No, thank you very much.
Tourism is slowly beginning to pick up, but as you know, once we try and pick up, another wave comes in, and then maybe there's what do you call it, requirements for COVID tests on arrival, which is a bit of a bother for our travelers, and then we have to start again. But we hope for the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony, for your
update. Good words to kind of sum up the whole thing about resilience.
Yeah.
Hello?
No, thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate it. Yes, we did actually, Apollinari, our correspondent in Tanzania, did send a story yesterday about the terrible attack on the French embassy, and any update, of course, we appreciate it. It's a crazy world this morning with attacks in Kabul. We don't know what's going on. It looks like the only silver lining here, hotels must be full, even though they are Afghani refugees, but it's paid for stays, and that is probably a welcoming business opportunity in Uganda. And thank you for always being there, Tony, and giving us updates. I've been to Uganda, I remember with Louis D'Amour from the Peace Through Tourism Institute many years ago, and we went actually to what is now South Sudan at the border region between Uganda and South Sudan, where we met with rebel leaders in the middle of pineapple fields. I never forget this. I was on the back of a pickup truck, and we had 4 or 5 guys with machine guns, and there's Louis D'Amour and me on back of the truck going into the middle of where I was texting license plates to my office in Hawaii. Not that it would make any difference, but it was an adventure trip. But what I got out of it, I have to say, besides interesting discussions, I love your pineapples. And I live in Hawaii, and we have good pineapples, but I've tasted nothing close to what you have in Uganda. Well, I think we're to an end of this event. Peter, what is important, and Severin, of course, if we wanted to buy your book, where can we do this?
Well, you can certainly buy it on Amazon, and that's probably the easiest. And on Amazon, not only can you buy it hard copy, but you can also download it onto your computer on the electronic copy, so the Kindle copy. So I would go there. If you can't find it for some reason, if you contact either Severin or me, or you can find it on through eTurbo News or World Tourism Network, then I will find another place that you will be able to buy the book. But in both cases, I think that this is really, hold it a little bit further back, Severin, there it is. Personal resilience, and you can see it's one flower going through the middle of some terrible of a desert. And that's really what we're in. That's a good way to summarize it, because all of us on some level live on a desert, and we're looking for wholeness. And I know you were talking about peace, and interestingly enough, the Hebrew word for peace is to make things come full circle and to find wholeness and completeness in life. So if we are able to do that, I think, we will create resilience. And I want to thank my co-author, Severin, for all her efforts and work, and we become good friends. And the book is a wonderful book, but having friendships is even more important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, thank you, Peter, because it's been really a pleasure writing this book with you. But as well, I would say, special thank you as well to Jürgen, of course, but as well to Dr. Trauer and to Tony, and, the stories that actually you shared. Because I think, that's what is, personal resilience. Again, we were mentioning before the social aspect, but I think it's very difficult to overcome this, to overcome things on our own. All right. So even when we are, in a moment of struggle, if we don't have someone that kind of either hold our hands or give an ear to listen to what we have to say, I think it can be really hard and lonely. So it's beautiful. So thank you. I mean, I really thank you, because I think that, beautiful stories, and, beautiful stories of the resilience, but as well, beautiful stories of action that we see, that, that things can be changed. There is a lot to do in the world. And again, even from that perspective, you mentioned, Dr. Trauer, actually about conflict, right? And about conflict, there is one thing that, if there is something that is wrong, it's kind of as well taking action towards that. When we see something that is wrong, and that's about resilience, because it's also about as well, carry on in what we believe is right. So thank you very much.
No, and thanks everybody. Just also, Peter, we forgot to mention on our original website, we don't mention very often your original website about your safety and security business, what is safertourism.com. We actually have a very prominent link right from every page on the bottom to your bookstore. And there are many books. It's not only this books, you wrote a lot of books. So if you go to safertourism.com, not only can you hire Peter to look into your safety security aspects of your destination or your hotel or whatever business you're in, you can actually get his books right on the top. So safertourism.com is another way to see this. Peter, if there's If there's nothing else, Peter, Severin, and Birgit, and Tony, and everyone else, last chance to raise your hand. If not, we're going to come to a close. And everyone who's listening and watching us live on eTurbo News now, we will repeat this starting in about 2-3 hours. And you can always find us on our YouTube channels. You find us on livestream.travel. And if you wanted to sign up for our next session on Sunday, what will be aimed towards listeners in Asia, or for next week, and we're going to introduce a new tourism hero next week, simply go to worldtourismevents.com and you can sign up for this and any other event that might be upcoming.
Well, I think it's a good way to end by just saying, considering what's going on in Kabul today, to wish everyone peace.
Absolutely.
That's probably a good ending. Is that let's hope that tomorrow is a more peaceful day than today.
All right. Good night. And we say aloha, what also has a meaning of peace.
It does. In love.
Aloha and peace to everyone.
And actually, in the Jewish world in Hawaii, they say shaloha, which is shalom and aloha, peace and love. So
Beautiful.
shaloha to everyone.